Yeah, I'm Jackson. I have zero experience with carpentry.
I studied at a school for historic preservation in Boston and learned about how things were built, 250 years ago.
There's a long way to go. I'm nowhere near the top. Not that I thought I was, but there's so much more to do out there.
Welcome back to the Passion for Craft podcast. We are talking about some fun stuff today. The topic is, what is the thing that we probably take too seriously here? So did you want to set this up? Do you want to set it up?
I'm trying to think of, so we're basically making fun of ourselves and saying like, what people tell you, like, okay, here's.
Well, but if you look back, like we've been just over a year now, if you look back at what people used to say, when we started this thing, we were like hardcore
cult members.
Yeah. If you don't subscribe to this, you our civilization is over as we know it, kind of thing. And so
we had Kool-Aid and everything.
Yeah. Seriously, we and so Kool-Aid.
It was actually Powerade, by the way.
I thought that we would here's what I'll start. I sometimes think that unless you think everything that I think, you're an idiot, right? But that's not true. And so obviously that's not true.
Are you sure you believe that?
Wait a minute.
He's like, that is. No. You know what? Let's do another episode.
But wait, what I mean is that there are a bunch of great builders out there who don't have any historic precedent, understand history, okay? There's great builders out there who aren't great craftsmen, okay? There's great builders out there who, don't care about the things that I care about, right? Mm-hmm. But they're still good builders. And so, I'm recognizing, and I look at my competitors. A lot of them, they're not doing YouTube videos. They're not doing almost any of the things that I'm doing, right? Mm-hmm. And they're very successful builders. And so you don't have to, I can probably take a chill pill, right, on my, staunch, you gotta, if you don't believe this, and then you're, and so now I still think that that's a great pathway, and I still think that makes us better builders. Mm-hmm. But, maybe we couch the word better, right, and or something. But that would be something I could take a chill pill on.
Seems like you have a standard that you're trying to follow. Like what I was going to say earlier is the single pane window.
Yeah, it's like the Build Show guys, right? Mm-hmm. They have a different metric for success than I have. Mm-hmm. Their metric for a great build is, an ACH of, under 1.6 or whatever the number is, whatever. It's a passive house. That's the gold standard. Where I look at that, and that's not the gold standard. Mm-hmm. So there are a number of different ways to be successful as a builder. But to your point, I think that I look at history and I look at who were the great builders of the past. And I look at William Buckland and, Samuel McIntyre and Asher Benjamin and all those guys that we've talked about. And I go, those guys are the ones we recognize today as the great builders. What were they doing? And when you study what they were doing, you go, okay, well, there's the formula for how to be better and how to build. There's a formula for how to build. And so that's driven a lot of my passions and, reason for doing the way things we're doing. But that's not the only way.
Do those Build Show guys laugh at you like Brent in a single pane window?
I think they look at me like that dude is I think I'm recognized on that thing as being very different from everybody else. Right.
I think they're like, I think they look at you like dollar signs leaking out every which way.
It's too expensive?
Yeah. Like, they're like, dude, that guy's missing out on so many money-making opportunities. Like, it would be so much easier if he just did this. He would make so much more if he just did this. He would do.
See, I don't think they think that. I think they think, I think that they think, I think they think that Brent has these weird clients that pay who has these clients that pay this much money for these kind of projects? It's stupid. I think they look at it that way.
And you would say they would be wrong.
Yeah, I would say that the classic mistake builders make is that they assume that they understand that the customers hired them to save money. Mm-hmm. And the customer has not hired them to save money. The customer has hired them to be competent. The customer has hired them to be honest, and because they want to build a great house. Yeah. And so, a lot of builders, in my opinion, make the mistake that they go, the first thing out of their mouth is, I can get that for less, or that they'll say, oh my gosh, you don't want to spend that. That's too expensive. And I'm just like, you're stupid for saying that, because you're assuming that your job is to save the client money, and that's not what your job is, is what I would say.
I think it's like a quote that should be said. Like, the builder's assuming that their job is to save the client money, but my job as the builder is to build them a great house. Like, that should be a quote.
Financial advisor or something.
That's like,
the reason I say that is, and we've talked about this before, is that their number in their head is never the number that they tell us, right? And so they're already managing their dollars because they know, talking to their friends, it always takes longer and costs more, right? Mm-hmm. And so they know that. And so they'll say to us, our budget's $2 million. Okay. And then really their budget is $3 million, okay, but they're not telling me that. So already my job is not to save them money, okay? They're managing their dollars. And for me to take on that responsibility is stupid. It's
almost like a boundary that you're putting in place of like, hey, look, the best thing that I can do for you is provide you the service that I'm good at providing, which is building a great house. And so that's what I'm going to do. And if you want to worry about your money, that's great. We'll talk about that. Like, I'll work with you on that. But
one of the things I end up ranting about on this thing is about builders who say, you don't want to do that, it costs too much. And that is that false assumption is that person's out there trying to save the client money, when I think the opportunity is to that's just not my focus.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I say this a lot. I feel like a lot of builders are just businessmen. Like, their main goal is to turn a profit. Yeah. Whereas, like, I feel like you and others like you are like, we want to create something beautiful. Mm-hmm. Like, we want to make money too.
I've talked about that before. I mean, and maybe that's another big distinction is just I realize that I'm the artist, realize that I care about beauty more than I care about profit. And it's probably the 80-20 rule, that 80% of builders out there are, no, I got to make money. Mm-hmm. And, 20% are let's make it beautiful.
Yeah, like, look at that panel behind you with all that carving and the curve. Like, let's just do that square and move on.
Yeah. Right.
That's like, put yourself in the mind of them. It's like, we're trying to make money. Uh-huh. What are you doing with that?
Yeah, why would we? And that's where I made the dollar sign comment of like, I think they're looking at you as like dollars out the door, potentially. I don't know about the build show people, but other builders definitely.
Yeah, that's a good question. What do other builders think of? Do they roll their eyes? Is that what you're thinking?
That's what I'm saying. But it's honestly like kind of a catch-22 in a sense. I might be using that wrong. Just thought of it. It's kind of funny. But it might be a little bit like that because other builders look at you and go, oh my gosh, like, look at all the money this guy's losing here. Like, I'm sure your margins are way tighter than another person's margins out there. Like,
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I mean,
I don't either. I'm just saying, like, the amount of time and effort and things you spend on a, like, let's just say $5 million house that other builders are out there building these crappy $5 million
I could have built
house.
that. Well, I think they look at it and go, I could have built it for $4.
Right.
But
also their margins on a $4 million, like, that just speaks to their margins. Like, I could have.
See, I don't think you're using the profitability margins thing. I bet most builders out there don't know what their margins are.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I doubt that most builders are.
It's classic apprentice talk right there. No idea.
Yeah, I don't think that most builders understand their numbers very well. I would say that.
Would you agree with that?
20% do.
I don't know. I feel like the production ones would, but I guess we're not talking about that.
Thinking.
You're talking
about
production
more guys.
I think there's a lot of builders out there surviving on cash flow and don't really know what they're making on a job.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know that because I used to be one of those guys.
Yeah.
And you know, if we had money in the bank, we were profitable. And if we, you know, and you know, that's how I looked at things. Why? Well, I wasn't trained in business. I was trained in building. So I didn't know how the numbers work. We had money in the bank. Yeah, we're good. Right. But you don't really know on each job what you're making, what your margins are, what you're charging. And it took me a long time to figure that out.
Yeah.
What's another thing about that we take too seriously, like that people would make fun of us about? I think it's the moldings, right? Don't you get that?
I think you take the moldings too seriously.
Like I'm always talking about the Windsor and how it's like all sharp cut and like precise.
Yeah. And you people do kind of roll their eyes at that.
Yeah, they're just kind of like, you can get the same thing at Home Depot and Lowe's, and I'm like, dude, I'm showing you these two boards up close side by side, but it's like, who cares about that?
Are you talking about that
you
YouTube
know?
video you made with the Lowe's and the Windsor boards?
Yeah, I had a lot of
pushback
on that.
You
yeah.
did?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people who realized that the Windsor was obviously the clear winner.
Yeah.
But custom millwork stuff, you
Yeah.
know, versus just off the shelf stuff. Do you think people laugh at us
Yeah,
about that?
probably. I mean,
taking it too serious.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, almost 100%, right? I mean, because, I mean, the same guy that I was just talking about who's saying, I can do that for less, and, you know, you look at it and go, there's plenty of good moldings out there. You don't have to get a custom molding,
Yeah.
right? When they say
Yeah.
that?
There's
Yeah.
kind of this funny balance in this, in a sense, where like there are things that we like probably take ourselves too seriously in, but then, you know, even you just saying that, Richard, I'm like, wait, no, that we're not taking ourselves too seriously in that. Like, that's actually a good thing to take ourselves too seriously in.
Well,
But
that's
then,
that
you
was
know,
my,
so I
that was
like,
my
wait, what
first
the
thought
heck?
is like, well, moldings do matter.
Yeah.
But that's the point.
Yeah,
That is
I
the
know.
point.
They
'Cause
don't.
It's this
They
kind of
don't
funny
matter.
balance
No,
where
I'm
you're
just
like, it's like, oh no, we got a different problem. No, it's one of those funny things because it's like, yes, those are super important, but it's like, do we take ourselves too serious in that? You know, probably. But then also it's like, but there actually is quality to be said. Like there's a reason we're talking about a lot of this stuff on the shows because there's a difference that you can be seen that you can hold in. But are we too rigid about it? Yeah, probably.
Well, I mean, it's just like, you know, I'm not making fun of, but I'm pointing out the difference with the build show guys where build science is the, you know, standard. You know, you got to do good build science. Whereas I'm like, right, and just kind of meh. Pardon me.
That was awesome. We're gonna take that.
Did you hear that? That's an elf thing. Did you hear?
Oh, I don't
Remember he
that.
burps.
Drinks
He
the soda
burps.
at the
he
table.
drinks
Oh
this,
yeah,
and he
it's
goes.
like obviously I heard that. You know,
It's like 15-second burp.
Did you?
after that 2 liter, right?
He chugs the whole Coke.
Right?
just-
I mean, but that's the same thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I sit there and look at those build show guys go, you know, and they're sitting there looking at me like, custom moldings, what are you doing?
Well, but there
they,
is
they,
something-
they don't even put moldings in the house.
Oh, I know.
They don't even put moldings in the house. And we're sitting there talking about a custom one. And they're like, why would you spend money on that?
First of all, we're not doing any moldings, let alone your custom stuff.
Yeah.
That is a funny distinction, like between the guys who aren't putting any moldings in whatsoever.
Well, so in your world, Richard, do you think guys look at like the tools that you're spending money on and go, what would you do?
I used to be one of them. I used to not. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's part of the growth. It's like you see, I can get this job done with this specific tool, but there's a better tool. You know, like it was a long, stubborn road.
Yeah.
Like for me
Yeah.
to, you know, kicking and screaming, running away from Festool. But I'm telling you, man, like
right call
I
in the
wish because I would have saved a lot. But yeah, I'm a tool snob now, so
Well,
people are like, pff. I've even had people call me like I sold out.
Yeah.
Like sold out. I bought all this stuff. You know, I've been given a product.
Why would they say you sold out?
Because I used
Because he reps the stuff.
Yeah, like the Milwaukee and like the DeWalt Milwaukee.
No, I know, but
That implies that you've been paid for all of those.
No, wait. Are they saying that you sold out because they're jealous that Festool's a better tool and that you sold out, or they think Festool's a worse tool?
I think they're saying like I'm a trader. Like it's kind of like
Because they
switch
Well,
teams or
and they're
something,
assuming
you know?
that he's been paid to be a spokesperson for Festool.
No, I know. I know.
Okay.
I know
Which
That's
I
where
have.
the sellout thing.
I think I've probably spent like 15,000 in Festool, and probably they've given me one tool.
Yeah.
So
$15,000 for one tool. Was it worth it?
No, I have 15.
No, I know. I'm just
and a bunch of tools, but they've given me one tool.
Right. So clearly the math is off there for them to be like,
that I'm a sellout. Yeah. But yeah, I'm definitely like, I take the tools very seriously.
Yeah.
And it's something I used to think too, like, I mean, if it has a blade that moves, I can do it.
Right.
Yeah, I can make it work. And there is some truth to that, but no, there's
So
better
when you
tools
first
out
started out, what tools were you using?
Rigid. Yeah, rigid. I never went as far as to sink as low as Ryobi, but rigid was there. And then, the kind of the entry level DeWalt and stuff.
Yeah.
Just whatever was at Home Depot.
Yeah.
See, I think that there might be that what we're describing is an educational change that or a growth that you said is really what's going on, because I'll do that example about the watches, about that.
The Rolexes.
Yeah. Well, or that that architect had told me that it was the education of his client that finally he got fired like 3 times. Just do the exterior. A few months later, just do the interior. Okay. And the customer understanding what the quality was finally rose up, and that when he first started thinking about that architect, he's like, that's a waste of money. And then by the time he was educated and see what the architect do, he was like, oh, well, this probably is money well spent.
Yeah.
So maybe, all of our growth in where we get snobby and think that other guys are stupid, that, maybe if I knew more about build science, I wouldn't snub it as much.
Well, another huge thing for me with the Festool, this isn't sponsored by Festool, but, it may seem like it, but I really like them. I get everything. It comes in a sustainer, like a plastic case, and it's all organized.
And
like
that's Festool has done that.
Yeah, they've done it. You buy the tool, it comes in a box with a permanent place for blades, batteries, the tool itself. You close the box, and they all stack. So
that's huge
for me. Like, it's a huge organization thing, and
because now you're not buying the saw, the blades, the batteries individually and going, all right, now I need to buy a case.
No, he's still doing it.
You can do it both ways.
Yeah.
You can do it as a kit or separate. I do it as a kit, and it comes all in one thing.
Because when I bought rigid stuff, I've had to buy a case for that, a case for the holder. Like, I've had to go and individually do that, versus you're saying they even have like a...
Yeah, it's kind of like if you're cooking a big meal, like when you're doing a job, you start pulling out pots and pans.
Right.
It's like the same way on a job. Like, you're pulling out all these tools, and at the end of it, you have this meal, but there's this huge mess.
Yeah.
Well, now you have a place to put everything back.
Right.
Like, to give you a good example, I just bought a vacuum that was $800 for a little vacuum. Yeah. But because of the integration with the system, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So...
Everything has its
I'm
place,
I'm a big time tool snob now. Yeah. Like, people, they're probably like, you take that way too seriously. Yeah. You could, and there's tons of guys who I see on jobs who are like, they just have crappy stuff. And I'm like, you could do so much better with better tools. You know? But.
Well, one of the things on the tool note, one of my friends was looking into buying some tools. He was like trying to get some entry level stuff. And he asked one of our buddies who used to do like drop shipping stuff, who like sold a bunch of tools to people. He goes, hey, what tools should I be buying? And he goes, well, if you ask me, you're going to get a different answer than if you ask Jackson, because he doesn't believe in the kind of tools that I like to buy, but I'm Harbor Freight all the way. And so he's like walking me through it. He's like, and he's like, I know he disagrees, but like, I'll just explain. Harbor Freight does free replacements for life. And
which you'll be using often.
And they're super cheap, but anytime they've broken down, I just go and replace them, whatever. And he's like, if you're doing like anything more than just like house projects, don't use Harbor Freight. Like, go get a nice one, I guess, but like, I've just never had to deal with that. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, like, don't listen to that. Like, just buy a nice one. Like, if you're gonna, like, are you trying to buy tools for life? Like, if you get a nice drill, like, get a nice something.
So you're the apprentice, okay?
Yeah.
So you
glad to be here.
You have especially when we first started.
Yes.
Okay. Before you're drinking the Kool-Aid now, I think, for the most part.
Yeah.
What is the thing that stands out to you that you still are like, come on, really?
What do you mean?
We've indoctrinated him.
What do you
much.
mean?
Yeah, I know.
On my on things where I'm like, you should make fun of me, or the things that I'm like, really, you got to do that? What do
Maybe you think
I'm
we
confused
take
what the
too
question
Yeah,
is.
what do you think that Richard and I take too seriously? You maybe you have to think about when we first started.
I'm really gonna need to think about it. I think, man, my original answer to the question was just like black and whiteness. Like, I think the thing that I take too seriously is I'm just black and white, and I've been shocked that there are more middle ground answers to a lot of the questions that we're asking than I'm realizing. And so as we've done this podcast, I've kind of realized like nothing is set in stone, because the more I'm like, okay, this is a hard and fast rule because y'all have said it once. Y'all are like, no, that's not always the case. I'm like, well, I thought we agreed on
That's
this.
I
Like
can
6
relate to
episodes
that
ago.
too.
I thought we determined that.
Like, wait, hold on. What do you mean? But I'm just realizing everything's situational. So, I mean, that's my answer to that question. If that's
interesting.
But anyway, I think I've switched over to the tool purist side, where it's like, just buy a good one. And
What was
just,
the last tool you bought?
For me or for K-Life?
You bought some crap tools. Okay.
Well,
Full confession. Let's go. What is
Harbor
it?
for the
receipt in his
ministry that was
pocket.
trying to save money, I bought a used tool that was like super cheap, like $20 for a table saw, or no, miter saw. So
$20 for a miter saw.
correct.
$20.
Yes,
Was it
it was
used?
used. It was a used tool.
What was it?
A Kobe.
A
Cobalt, yeah. Sorry, I'm telling you, I did next to no research on
Yeah.
the thing. It was just, it's like a 8-inch saw.
Yeah.
And so it was miter saw. We need a miter saw for a project we were doing.
$20, you can't.
And
beat
so I was
that.
like, yeah, I'll buy this. And I'm trying to save the ministry money. I'm trying to I'm trying to make these compromises, where I'm
Wait,
just trying to figure
if
it
you
out.
saw a $20 saw for sale that was Cobalt, would you buy it?
I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't take it for free.
Well, here's the other thing. Like,
I mean, so I heard
Part
you
of-
say, well, yeah, you can't beat that. And I was like, well, wait a minute. You wouldn't take
Well,
it.
for like, I understand he's like.
but
a
part of it,
ministry
like,
and,
I've
they're trying
only
to
got
build
a certain
something.
amount of money
Yes,
that I can
yeah.
spend per month, and I've got a project that's taken like $800, and I'm like, all right, I'm not going to go spend another $800 on a nice saw, because realistically, we're only going to use it 3 times a year, maybe.
Yeah.
So it's
and
like
you're only cutting like straight 2x4s.
only cutting straight 2x4s.
Yeah.
I'm not doing angled cuts. I'm not doing like anything crazy. We just needed something that could cut straight, cut even, and do a good job of that. So I don't know. Is that a good solution? I don't know.
I think it's a good solution for that.
I think there are some people who listen to the podcast as well who are like in that boat, who do that. And so even when my friend was saying, hey, you should just buy this tool, I was like, hey, look, if that's all you're going to use it for, and it may be right. You may need to do the thing. But a part of me, like, I'm also the type of guy who only buys clothes that are going to last me a super long amount of time. Like, I'm not going to go buy a cheap set of T-shirts from the Gap. I want to buy like really nice ones. that will last a really long-
Wait. How expensive were your shoes?
Which shoes?
The ones you're wearing right now.
They're really comfortable.
You bought some crappy shoes.
Well, okay, but I've also done some math on shoes.
Okay, so now you're changing your story.
Well, listen.
No,
I think it's fair.
No,
I
you
think-
cannot have it both ways.
There are some UGG shoes that I really wanted to have. They're like house slippers, but I wear through house slippers so fast. I spent $100 on a pair of house slippers, wore through them in 1 year. So I've started going to Walmart and buying $20 shoes that are house slippers that last me 1 year versus buying a $200.
Okay,
nice
so
shoe.
so just what you said about you actually is
Well,
not true.
But the math works out in my favor versus with tools.
Okay,
I don't
so-
think the math works out in the favor.
But people would say, okay, that why would I spend that much on a house when I'm just going to move in 5 years? Or why would I spend that much on a window or a door when I'm
Well,
just going to move in 5?
I think part of that is they're looking at the house buying thing from the wrong light, right? Like, I think if you're looking, I think people's frame of mind has been set up to look at only living in a house for 5 years because they break
Oh,
down
I
after
know
5
that.
years.
I know
but
that.
I think that's a fundamental difference.
I'm giving you a hard time. Do you see
you
this? I'm trapping you in everything you say.
I know, but I'm just like, I think there's reasonable. I think there's some explanation.
Let me
here.
ask you a question, Richard. If someone came up to you today, and it's a $500,000 house like those ones we went out and saw.
Mm-hmm. The production house. He's talking about the production built houses.
Yeah.
Were those $500,000?
Yeah. Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Close to it.
It was close. It was like 600,000, but it's.
Let's just say it was around
like
$500,000. Like those. Would you buy that house?
No, not a chance.
Okay. What if you got it for $400,000?
No.
What's the number that you would move into?
I would
the house?
not move into the house.
Even if they gave it to you.
I would sell it. Yeah, if they gave it to me. Actually, I might buy it for like $100,000, knowing they're going for $6 million. I know it's a dumb analogy, but I get what you're saying. I would not.
I guess I'm sitting there. I was thinking about the tools, and I was sitting there going, "Okay, so you wouldn't? I wouldn't buy a $20 tool. I wouldn't. I just wouldn't do that."
Also, wait a minute. Back up here. Go back to when you had no tools.
Oh, I know.
You don't have a miter saw.
I know. I'm
Would
just.
you buy-
I'm seeing how far he would carry
But
this.
hold on. But jump back. Go back to, because that's the situation in which I bought it in. Now
Yeah.
you'll have a miter saw. That's great. You have no miter saw. One for $20, or you could spend $600 on a nice one. Which one do you do? In that setting.
Yeah.
Do you buy the nice one in hopes of like?
I think you made the right decision for you.
I agree. I'm not trying to defend my decision. I'm actually just genuinely curious with the experience and knowledge that y'all have.
On mine in my real life. I bought it. I didn't have anything. I bought it on credit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I bought the $600 miter saw.
You did? Okay,
yes,
so you did buy it.
Because I knew, hey, I'm starting a business. I'm not going to get some secondhand, thing. I want new.
A nice one.
Something.
Someone sent me a question on YouTube the other day. She said,
wait, so his answer was yes. Before you get to this question, what's your answer to that?
I would buy the good tool too.
Okay.
His would be old.
Well, that's what she said. Her question was, should I buy an old tools or new tools? Mm-hmm. So before I tell you what my answer was, what was your answer?
My answer is, I'm buying new tools because they're festival. They're new.
Wait, I think it's different.
But I'm
on the job
power
or shop tools.
I'm talking battery tools.
Yeah.
Shop tools I would definitely
shop tools are
prefer
on the job.
The old cat. Like
what about hand tools?
Old. I would like to buy old.
I think old as well. I've just been made fun of by you too. I've been bullied into saying.
No, I like old hand tools. I look on eBay for them.
Really?
Like I found some nice old chisels on
so
eBay.
What I said to her is, I said, if I'm buying new battery tools and things like that, I'm buying the newest thing because they're lighter and easier to use and stuff like that, more powerful and everything else. They have lights and all the, they are better.
They're nice.
They're nice.
They work good.
But shop tools, I'm buying old tools. Hand tools, I'm buying old tools.
You like my machine though, right? It's brand new.
Uh-huh.
And my bandsaw and all that.
I wouldn't have bought a multi-tool. Mm-hmm. Even if I was in your situation, I wouldn't have bought a multi-tool. Mm-hmm. It's just, even though that's a good tool, right? Yeah. I was, the way I was trained is you have a shaper, you have a table saw, you have a joiner, and each tool has its own use and its purpose, and I wouldn't want to break down setup.
I've even said this. If I could go back and do it again, I would have bought it separate.
Really? Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I would have just put stuff on wheels and pushed it out of the way.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would have done.
That's a good
But you live and learn, and it is a good little machine, and I'm making a lot of cool stuff with it.
Yeah, mm-hmm. It is a quality machine, right?
Yeah.
It's milled.
Even though it's brand new.
Yeah. And I think that when we were out at the shop last time, I said, I kicked the bottom of those cast iron machines from the 50s and 60s, and they're just beasts. They're just beasts. Yeah. And so you're just like, well, it's like dishwashers today. You get those 1960, 1970 dishwashers that just have a motor in them that won't stop. They'll just go and go. And now you have all these.
Really? I just went through
these
this.
LG and the things. They're so finicky. Like ours leaks right now. We got to get a new one. It's just they're crap.
Really?
And those like old machines, 16th-inch plastic housing.
Yeah, and those old machines were so powerful. The machines were so good. It was just like those. There's an example of an old machine versus a new machine that's not as good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ours, we just went through that, and it showed up cracked.
Well, and
crazy
when Jackson
distinction.
goes to North Bennett Street, when they say we got to go get a hand plane, he's going to go to a
Lowe's.
Flea market.
flea market and buy and find an old tool.
A Buck Brothers.
Yeah. Yeah, and then that gross.
That's what I'm saying, where I've been bullied into, buying stuff. Why I bought stuff, and then you're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know.
They're going to call you and be like, did you talk to this kid before you sent him to us?
I'm not sure this is your son.
Yeah. He said he saw a garage sale and bought an old DeWalt. I don't know what he's thinking. It was $20.
You buy the Buck Brothers at the flea market because you think it's
I remember the guy that I was working with that I had that kind of trained me. I told you about him, that old timer that
Tom?
Leeds Clark.
No, the Ken Hayes guy.
Ken.
No, I never heard of him.
So the very first guy I hired, okay, I put an ad in the paper, and I'm sure I would love
What's
to.
that?
I would love a paper. Yeah, gosh, I'm dating myself, aren't I? I put an ad in the paper. So this was 1992, 93. Put an ad in the paper that said, hey, looking for craftsmen. I'm sure it said something like that. Craftsmen building fine houses, doing, I'm sure it was all my
Jargon.
Yeah. And he responds to the ad, and I go down to him. Have I ever told you this story? I go down.
I don't remember
I go
this.
down.
Told me, sorry.
I go down to Benbrook. He lives down in Joshua or something. I go drive down there to see his house and see him, and we're standing in the yard. It's like a subdivision street of 1 acre lots, and he goes. I go, well, show me some of the stuff you built. And he goes, I built that house, and 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 pointed out all these houses. Like, so you were like the general contractor and you built them? He goes, no, I built them. I framed them, did the electrical, did the plumbing, did the roofing,
awesome.
did the trim, I was like,
So cool.
I think I do
Dang.
remember this now that you're.
I was like,
I didn't remember the name though.
Yeah.
I was dang. Anyway, he was he was a great first employee because he taught me so much. He was, I was 30 at the time. He was 50, 55. And so,
It's ironic. Your first employee taught you so much.
yes.
That it just seems like the phrasing should be opposite.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
no, that's true.
That is
And
crazy.
so he told me how to, just manage my toolbox for the next day. And it's like he would go home at the end of the day, clean his tools, and then set up the tools they would need for the next day. And you look at, at the time, I was probably just throwing crap into the back of my truck, and everything was piled up. There was wood chips, there were pieces of trim, just junk, and it was a mess. And he came in, drove in, always was at the job early. We started at probably 5 a.m. He would be at my house at like 3:45, 4:15. Like I would wake up in the middle of the night, look outside. His truck would be out there ready for work. It was just like, who are you? Leave me alone. And
Freaking machine.
but I thought
out
about
there
him
sharpening
because
chisels.
he
Yeah.
had
He's got a leather hide that he's wrapping them on.
He had the original nail guns, like the original
Pneumatics.
and the old skill saws and the old drills that were so heavy. Have you seen how heavy those are? Those old tools, they were heavy.
It's like the old phones. Like you need a backpack for them.
Just a workout.
Old
You
cell
got a
phone.
Yeah, it was a
bicep.
workout. It was all it was like carrying a cast iron barbell around. And anyway,
hilarious.
I was thinking about that because he looked at a lot of my tools. Like he was old school and looked at a lot of my tools, like a chisel and stuff like that, and was just like he
made a face for audio listeners.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
like, what are you doing pulling out a chisel? And so I would show him kind of some old school ways of chiseling the thing. And he was like, he had never had sharp chisels. And he saw how sharp my chisels were. And he's like, and he got sharp chisels. So there was a
give and take.
It was mostly him giving,
Yeah.
but there was a little bit of take.
I
But-
taught him a thing or two.
Yeah, he learned it.
You learned one thing from him.
Anyway,
That guy's a stud. That's crazy.
it was pretty awesome having him as a teacher on that for me, and he more taught me how to prep for work and prep for things. And he had bad feet. I think he had plantar fasciitis or something, because I remember him. He would go off and he couldn't work with me all the time. And I told you about that drunk lady that we did the kitchen for. He came back from one of his stints, and he taught me how to just handle tough customers, just kind of laughing and just kind of ignoring them and then just moving on. It was anyway, good education.
And you said she waddled back to the back with her drink
With her bottle of champagne
at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
Good morning.
10 a.m. Yeah,
That's fun.
It was nuts. Anyway,
Yeah, that's cool.
so
I
we
mean,
kind of got off on some stuff.
Well, I think just as I've been thinking about this more, about what are the things that I hear you guys do that I'm like, what? There's one thing that I'm just thinking of the everyman for, and it's the paying. Like when we started this podcast, I think I always had the thought I think I'd heard it said from both of you guys, like there is a way to compromise, like not paying as much, but still getting a quality like old time thing. And I think we were trying to have it all kind of at the beginning of the podcast, where it was kind of like, no, there are ways that you can save costs, but then also not do this, but then also not. And I was like, okay, well, what are those ways? And the more we've done the podcast, the more I'm realizing like you're always going to have to pay more for this.
More for quality.
More for quality.
Yeah.
And a lot of times your return on that is the not paying for the same window 15 times. And that's where a lot of times you're going to get that return. But I think that's one thing that I had to just kind of let go, because a lot of people were like in the comments, like the first couple podcasts we released, a lot of people were just saying like, nah, you don't want to do that because you're going to have to pay so much more for it. And I was like, what do you mean you're going to have to pay so much more for it? Like they said, Richard and Brent said that it wouldn't have to be paid more. But that's kind of one thing where I've just been like, no, there is a cost element to it. But there are ways that you're going to see that money again. It's like you've just got to do the math on whether or not you are going to sell your house in 5 years, or whether or not you're going to keep your house.
Well,
is a forever house. You know what I mean?
Here's, and I'll take that and go this other direction. Okay, what are the things we don't take ourselves seriously enough about? And so, like, you start naming some of those things. I'm starting to thinking about Hardy or something like that, or some of these plastic
What's
things.
Hardy? Sorry.
It's a concrete siding. It's a concrete
It's
exterior
the
board.
thing that you broke. Yeah. Okay.
And I was just like, yeah, that's crap. Like, no, we shouldn't be doing that. And I know that there's people out there going, oh, they're rolling their eyes right now because I'm saying that about Hardy. But it's just like there are some things that do matter that much, I think.
When you say us, you're talking about like society or the build community. Like we don't take that serious enough.
No, I'm saying like
us three.
Like I'm saying for us three, like the things that you like. Even though I'm admitting that there's other builders that can be really good builders that don't have to adhere to all the things that I adhere to. There's also some things that I'm sitting there going, yeah, but still, I wouldn't. I'd never do that.
They still should adhere to these things.
I think a lot of that is there's certain clientele that wouldn't want you, and certain clientele that wouldn't want them.
Yeah.
True.
It's like the homeowners that want a classical house are going to lean more towards someone like you versus someone who wants contemporary, all efficient.
Right.
They're going to walk in here and be like, oh, this is just way too crazy.
Well, on the efficiency front, one of the things that's kind of crazy about it is everything that Quinlan Terry said. Just that we did an episode a while ago about Quinlan Terry and like what things that classical building, like if you build things the old way, the way that they were built, how they actually are more efficient, how they are more like, your R value is going to be lower, all those things.
Yeah, thermal mass and things.
So I mean, yes, to those build show people who would be like, or not build show, but to those people who are like all build science, all build whatever, it's like, hey, there is still some value on the other side. I don't know. That's something that I would say people don't take seriously enough, or that we don't take seriously enough. It's like, look, there is an option out there for
no, and I think I I mean, I think the caveat just with the build show guys is I want to do 80% of what they're doing.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to do that last 20. And so, because I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah.
Or I think you sacrifice too much to get there. But
I just misspoke when I said build show, but
yeah, build science.
Build
but,
science.
But just, I don't know. I mean, I still think there is, even though I'm admitting I'm a purist, right? That I have the values and that I think these things are really important. I guess where I was thinking is that there are, I'm laughing at myself or trying to just saying, I recognize that I do this, but at the same time, I still stick to those things and I'm not going to change, right? It's just like,
It's important to you.
There's a big
and it makes
reason.
sense.
Yeah. There's a reason behind the decision.
Yeah.
So why would you, like for me, like I got made fun of when I made that single pane window for my laundry room.
Right.
Single pane glass. Oh man, it's like, for me, I'd rather see that deep Muntin profile than like save 50 cents, for the year.
Yeah.
Like that profile is
right.
I look at it all the time. I'm like, that's nice. Every time I pass by it, and that's important to me.
Yeah, it gives you joy.
Yeah, it brings me a lot of joy. It's really, so yeah, it's like, I understand it's goofy. It's like, really, dude? Like you're gonna, be inefficient.
I just think there's so many things out there in the market that don't make sense, and I think you have to have voices that challenge those suppositions. And the building building glass towers is the most inefficient, worst thing we can do for our environment. Yeah, we're doing it all the time, right? And that's not even my beef. That's not even my, I'm not going to go die on that hill.
Yeah,
but
that's commercial.
Yeah,
stuff.
so, but at the same time, there are stupid things that we're doing out there that should be called out. I think we are countercultural in this message than what we're saying. I think we're, what are we? The 2%, that are making this claim to, run after craft. When most people are like, people won't pay for craft, right? And that was the first thing we heard from people on this show was just, no one will pay for that.
I think,
which is proven wrong.
Yeah, it is. It is proven wrong. I think the thing that people were pushing back. I think the most comments that I personally saw were, I don't want to pay for that. Like that was the pushback was like, I want this thing, but I don't want to pay for that. So how do I get around it? What's my,
See, and I think, and that's part of the countercultural push that I'm talking about. Like people want to eat healthy, but they don't want to pay for good food,
right?
And so people want a beautiful, well-crafted outfit. They don't want to pay for craft, and so I think that it is a problem.
And there is something to say about capitalism where it's like, I would work more for a home-cooked meal, but also I just want to pay for the convenience. Like, I'd rather just pay to have a meal prepped for me. I'd rather pay to, and like, people will do that. And people will pay to, so people will pay to have a meal prepped for them, or if they don't want to prep the meal themselves, they will pay to go to McDonald's and get a fast, easy food, but it's not good for them.
And I think that most of the reason why our clients are older, right, is because they have experienced the cheap, right? They've lived in the cheap house. They've lived in the middle house. They've lived in a nice house.
Yeah.
But they aspire to this thing, or they've learned the lessons and the problems with those other things, and they want to be, in that type of house, and that they're willing to pay for it.
Yeah. I'm not even old, and I can relate to that. When I lived in my production house, I was like seriously depressed.
Yeah.
Like I was just like, this place sucks. Yeah. Like it's just so depressing. It's like a compound,
Yeah.
And then like realizing there's actually crafted things, it makes you
I guess
appreciate
but going back to that, you wouldn't, if someone gave you that house, you wouldn't move into it. You'd never live there. You would never live there, right? But you would never live there, even if they gave it to you. They wouldn't live there.
It makes me sick thinking about it.
I think that's important.
I think that's where my tool episode came into, or my tool comment came into place. Because in just thinking about it, I don't have y'all are both homeowners. I don't own a home. Aspiring homeowner. See you soon. But I will say, if someone's going to give me that house, I'm going to go move into it. And they're like,
I'll help you do stuff to it.
Yeah. But there are some things, like if that's the house, one, I'm never going to go for that house. I would always sacrifice square footage in order to get a nicer or an older home that's going to be better and not break down. One of my biggest hatreds is when things just break easily. So that's one thing for me where I'm just like, I would never go for that. But if it is given to me, I'm going to go live in it, you know? I might do the flip, like sell it really quick method, just sell it for someone else. And I hear that as well, but I think that's kind of a loophole. But
I think people,
I
people may push back on this episode. That they I can't believe you guys would say I wouldn't live in that house.
No, look, there's something wrong with me. Like, I hated my house, my old house. And most people would be like, you should just be happy to have a home. But no, I hated that thing. I
think there's something to that, though, where you should be happy to have a home, all that stuff. Yeah, I think there's validity to that. But also at the same time, you're working on other homes day in and day out. So, like, it's almost like you actually see the other side.
Oh, for sure.
Whereas a lot of people don't necessarily see that or don't. Like, they go over to someone else's home and
like,
but
you were living in that house while you were working on not very good houses.
But at least you saw other homes.
But I was also already watching your stuff. And I was already like leaning towards the direction of like, there's so much better opportunity than what I am. And I realized it was a starter home, but even like, you know, we're talking about making fun of, you know, stuff we take too seriously. I mean, even my own wife was like, this is fine. Like it just works. And like, and even now when I'm doing projects, she's like, just get it done, you know? And I'm like, no, I want to take the time and do it right. And I can't blame her. I have our house ripped up. So, you know, there is that truth to like, dude.
How many projects you got working in your house right now?
Really just one. But I have, since I had to basically remodel the back living room because I wanted to create a classical mantle. And this way it was laid out wouldn't accept it. Mm-hmm. So I took the fireplace out of the corner, got rid of it, put a new one centered. And then I have 2 openings for windows on the side and 2 openings on the top of those. Yeah. And then the doors right there. So I have a lot, but it's mostly I'm refinishing the floor. Yeah. Then I want to open up the staircase there.
So you're dismantling that one room.
And really I'm trying to do it like one thing at a time, but you know that can't happen. Yeah. Like if you move something
else has to move. Yeah.
It's a chain reaction.
Well, just on you're saying people are going to be upset about this episode. I think the point of this episode is to go, we take some things too seriously, and like you can laugh at us for that, and like that's great, you know. Like we laugh at ourselves for that. We understand that we're taking things really seriously, and so even the comment of like just be happy to have a house to live in is like, yes, super grateful, like, but that's not what we're aspiring to.
You could say, in my opinion, it's like if someone gave you Yugo, right, or a terrible car. That's what we're kind of
like you wouldn't drive it.
Well, I wouldn't drive it, right? And so there are things out there. I'd go do something else, but I would never drive that car. Yeah, right. So I think it's the same thing. So maybe it's not that big a deal.
Well, we do take things too serious though, because I'll be like, we'll go out to eat, and I'll be like, look at that miter. And she's like, can we just eat the meal? Please, can we eat? No.
You're like, but they don't even match up.
Yeah, look, excuse me, waiter.
We've been driving by this apartment complex by our house that has a little turret on it. For 15 years. And my wife yesterday said, look at that turret. It's terrible. I was like,
has she been watching our podcast?
I was like, yeah, I've been driving by that terrible thing for 15 years. And you're just noticing it now. So anyway.
So the podcast is working. We're reaching people.
Even our own wives. Well, you can wait 2 seconds. Thanks for watching this episode of the Passion for Craft podcast. We'll see you next time.